to the future, bringing Africa together, connecting Africa to the world. These are some of the mottos the Ethiopian Airlines has kept on board its aircrafts for decades. Has it really been going to the future, bringing Africa together and connecting Africa to the world?
I believe I can fly. Oh, I believe I can fly.
August 18, 1929 was a clear, bright and sunny day in Addis Ababa despite the rainy season. Since early that morning, a number of people had been making their way towards Gefersa, a place some 50 kilometers to the west of the town. Rich and poor, young and old, expatriate and local alike, were all in a great hurry to get to the site. The cause of all this great excitement was indeed a historic event, the arrival of the first airplane in Ethiopia, a French Potes 25, piloted by André Mallet.
I believe I can fly. Oh, I believe I can fly.
On September 5th, 1929, the second aircraft was about to arrive in Ethiopia. This time, a German Junkers landed at Jan Meda. Earlier that day, the plane was accorded a colorful reception when it flew over the eastern town of Harar. The governor, the Judge Imru, accompanied by dignitaries of the town, was present on the occasion. After circling the town, the plane dropped mail and a personal note from the pilot to the governor and flew off to Addis. In the reception that followed, the Judge Imru expressed his optimism over Ethiopia's air transport development.
We are lucky to have been able to see this air train today. We hope that we shall live to see our young men flying and building it.
17 years later, the Ethiopian Airlines was set up as joint venture with the American Airlines, known as Trans-World Airlines. Thereafter, silence was broken in the Ethiopian sky.
I believe I can fly. Oh, I believe I can fly.
The first scheduled flight took place to Cairo via Asmara in a Douglas C-47 Skytrain. The crew for this flight were all Americans who fully held key positions at the opening of the air transport service in Ethiopia. Following the successful inaugural flight to Cairo, a regular weekly schedule was established. Weekly flights to Djibouti and Aden, as well as domestic flights to Jimma, followed. During the late 40s, the international route network was extended to Nairobi, Port Sudan and Bombay. Charter flights were also flown to Jeddah during the Hajj season, carrying pilgrims to Mecca. By the end of 1952, the Skytrains were still the mainstay of the domestic routes, linking 21 towns and cities to the capital. This time around, 3/4 of the airline staff were now Ethiopians, but still expatriates hold most key posts.
I believe I can fly. Oh, I believe I can fly. Hey, 'cause I
The first Ethiopian commercial aircraft commander, Almayo Abebe, made his solo flight as captain on a DC-3, otherwise known as C-47 aircraft in 1957, and he records the challenge during those times.
The biggest challenge we faced in my time was the jet age, because we were in we call it the first generation of airplanes or piston aircraft. But then came the jets, the turbo jets and the jet, that's pure jet, like the present aircraft. But they were on smaller size, or not as sophisticated as they are now. But they are called the first generation jets. That was in the early 60s. That's when we started flying the jets.
One of the earliest stewardesses of the airline indicates that during those days, on which women were not encouraged to serve as hostess in the airline, stewardesses were subjected to do more than serving recreations to the passengers.
They are sometimes as salesman, sometimes as owner of the airplane. So every time there is a work to be done, everybody joins. If there is a delay, we have to serve the passengers. We have to treat them nicely. We provide them food. There is no discrimination. There is no, this is a pilot, this is a cabin crew, this is a mechanic. Everybody have to dispatch the flight on time.
The long-time and earliest clients of the airline, who is also well known for his coining of the famous tourism logo, 13 Months of Sunshine, Haile Selassie Taffese describes his first encounter to the airline as exciting.
In 1946, I was virtually kidnapped from Athens. A certain black person came and took me by force.
We don't know.
That was later on I found out my father. Now, he chased me in the city with stones, then he put me in the plane, he made an agreement with the family I was living with. I was under impression that they sold me. I was under impression that I was sold. And then put me in a plane and brought me to Cairo. Then I discovered that this is really my father, and he was at the time the first president of Ethiopian Airlines by virtue of being the Minister of Transport and Communication at that time, in 1946. And then I kept me a few days in Cairo, then I came to Addis Ababa. Again, I knew nobody. By accident, somebody picked me up and took me to what is called my mother's house. And that's how I returned, and ever since I used to fly often. Then we flew with goats, sheep, chickens, skins, and so on. That was part and parcel of there was no cargo there.
In 1957, the airline established its own maintenance facility at Addis Ababa, reducing the need for overseas maintenance. The earliest technicians of the Ethiopian Airlines, who were drawn from the National Air Force, were trained in the United States. One of the technicians recalls the situation.
When we started, it was very, very difficult for Ethiopians because there were no qualified Ethiopians, just hired cleaners, this and that. We, few people, about 50-something, were recruited from schools and trained by ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, for 2 years. After graduation, 2 people passed the examination. All of us, but the top 2 people were awarded scholarship to United States, FAA, and we were assigned Northrop Aeronautical Institute. When we finished, we returned to Ethiopia, and at that time there was a very, very difficult situation between Ethiopians and the rest. Different nationalities, Egyptians, Germans, Armenians. Automechanics were used as a mechanic in airplane. And when we came, again, we passed the exam in good result. Me and my friend, we came and started the job. Before that, those people who were trained with us, they were in different places. They were doing fine, but difficult for them. And when we came, me and my friend were assigned as acting senior mechanic, rather than the people or the Americans who were qualified like us were foreman, general foreman, everywhere. But we were allowed to start the job as a senior mechanic, acting senior mechanic, and provided that we pass the examination of senior mechanic, we have to be hired as a senior mechanic. Otherwise, stay until further notice.
In subsequent years, the airline facilities expanded into a well-equipped center for maintenance, overhaul and modification work on aircraft, engines and avionics systems, not only for its consumption, but also for other airlines in the region. In December 1962, the new runway and control tower at Bole International Airport went operational, and 2 Boeing 720Bs arrived. The Ethiopian Airlines is the first in Africa to order the Boeing 720B.
I believe I can fly. Oh, I believe I can fly. Hey, 'cause I believe in you.
The Ethiopian Airlines expanded its routes to Africa and Europe through time, and attracted worldwide attention on 1st June 1984, when its first Boeing 767 landed at Bole International Airport after a 13.5-hour delivery flight from New York, setting a new world record for commercial twin jets.
I believe I can fly. Oh, I believe I can fly.
In April 1996, the Ethiopian stretched its route network from Europe to Beijing, China, and Bangkok, Thailand. The Middle East and Indian subcontinent were all represented, and the airline's African routes reached Senegal and Ivory Coast in the west, Cairo in the north, and Johannesburg and Durban in the south.
Oh, I believe I can fly. Hey, 'cause I believe in you.
For the Ethiopian Airlines, the 60-year voyage was not an easy task. Besides other matters, the Ethiopian has gone through various flight security challenges, ranging from technical difficulties to hijacking and others related to political issues. Chief Executive Officer of the airline remembers the forceful purchase of aircrafts from the then Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR, while the Ethiopian had planned to buy jets from the Boeing company in the United States.
Once I remember the Ethiopian Airlines was in a position to buy forcefully airplanes from the then USSR, while it had planned to buy aircraft from the Boeing company. The other problem still printed in my mind is that sometime in the past, some African airliners, after realizing the fact that Ethiopia had been increasing its expansion, they have made an attempt to thwart its expansion. However, the management of the airlines has tried to solve the problems systematically. If the Ethiopian had not taken such measure, it would have been in jeopardy like most African airliners.
One of the unexpected and unforgettable challenges the Ethiopian faced in its 60-year journey was an accident that occurred in 1997. Boeing 767 that departed from Bole International Airport carrying 170 passengers was stranded by hijackers. Men, women and children on board were praying and screaming. Nevertheless, the hijackers gave deaf ears to the crew's plea, and the episode ended up with a tragedy that has still remained in the minds of many. Out of the 170 passengers on board, 50 were rescued after the aircraft had crashed down into the Indian Ocean near the Comoros Islands.
Everyone that has lost the one that they truly love.
The captain of the airplane describes the situation as challenging and an incident that shouldn't have occurred.
In general, the accident shouldn't have happened. That is, if they had followed my instructions or my advice, accident shouldn't have happened. But unfortunately, they didn't want to listen to me. They didn't want to accept my plea. Then we had to run out of fuel. And then at last, I wanted to land at an airport that's in Moroni. That was also not possible. Then I decided to ditch. That's land on the water.
Despite the challenge it faced in due course of its service, the Ethiopian is still getting stronger and tougher, contributing its share to the country's economy.
Was the airline beyond its contribution to the economy in terms of transport, both passenger and cargo? It has all these social, cultural, political and diplomatic values it added to Ethiopian arena.
Chief Executive Officer of the Ethiopian Airlines describes the overall development as encouraging. He says the various training centers of the airline have been showing remarkable achievements since their establishments.
Nearly 500 out of these 750 pilots were Ethiopians. The other 250 pilots, 1/3 of the pilot body, were foreigners that were trained for other airlines, which included African Airlines mostly, and few Middle East carriers. And the technical school trained over 2,100 technicians. Out of these 2,100 technicians, nearly 1,500 technicians are Ethiopians who were trained for Ethiopian Airlines. The other, nearly 700 technicians, 699 to be exact, are foreigners who were trained for other African countries. Today, most of these trainees are leaders in their own countries.
As one of the major stakeholders of the country's economic development, the Ethiopian has been exerting utmost efforts to enhance trade and investment in the country. Both local and foreign investors laud the efforts the airline put forward to facilitate its services to the business community. However, they are not reluctant to speak of the problems they have.
We had our problems with Ethiopian when Ethiopian did not probably share our vision of us growing to such an extent that they will be having a problem to take out our produce. That was actually one of the problem areas worth mentioning. But now Ethiopian has seen our capacity and in fact is forecasting future expansions of the industry and has started to take this into consideration. One way is they have started to lease larger aircraft and hopefully in the future they will buy better aircraft, better jets to ferry our perishable cargo.
I would like to address two problems that we see as main problems and offer some type of a solution. One is regarding air transport. We are facing problem of capacity that we have flowers and there is no way to ship them to the destination market, mainly in Europe. What I would suggest is a coordination by the government between the importers and exporters, because the main problem is that the airplanes are coming back empty, and therefore the freight is more expensive, and we have lack of space. If there would be a coordination, even some benefits to importers that use the cargo on the way back, but there is some distribution of the air freight cost, I think it will enable to quite quickly add more transportation capacity, whether by Ethiopian Airlines or by other airlines.
The Chief Executive Officer nevertheless explains the progress being made to alleviate the complaints the investors indicate.
We are converting some of our 757s to cargo. We just relieved one from passenger service to convert to cargo. That will support Ethiopian export.
The construction of the new airport terminal has presently given a new turn for the airline's business. In 2003, the new 3,800-meter runway and control tower at Bor International Airport became operational. The renovation of the older terminal began same year to serve mainly the domestic flights. 60 years after its inception, this time around, the Ethiopian Airlines has played a remarkable role in bringing Africa together, thereby promoting Ethiopian culture and tourism potential.
It could be no airlines without tourism. They go parallel and work parallel. The Ethiopian Airlines has made a major contribution to the development of tourism. For one thing, they took me as a travel consultant, and that gave me possibility to travel free. They collaborated in all the brochures and pamphlets and promotional efforts we did. I think they did more than I did at that time.
Using its various modern airplanes and flying over 48 destinations, the Ethiopian is considered as #1 in Africa to have great potential to go farther.
I've had the pleasure of contributing to the design of every Boeing airplane. I know I'm really old. The 707, the 727, the 37, the 47, the 57, the 67, the 777, and now the 787. So I have had the fortune to grow up with Ethiopian Airlines. And I can remember the first 707, the first jet in Africa was operated by Ethiopian. I can remember when we designed the 767, the very first 767 was operated by Ethiopian Airlines.
Provided the remarkable improvements it has scored in the last 60 years, Ethiopian Airlines seems to be ready to achieve more and more.